To line up any shot accurately, you just need to push your cue straight through from where the white is to where it's going. So how can it sometimes look like you get this and your technique right and you still end up missing pots? So here are 5 unusual reasons why you might miss these shots that you may not have thought of. Welcome back, and if it's your first time watching one of our videos, then it's fantastic to have you here. Missing fairly straightforward shots can even affect some of the best players in the game. You're never going to be able to pot everything, but there are things you can do to heavily reduce the percentage of shots that you miss unnecessarily. And the first of these involves something that players have been doing for a lot shorter time than you'd actually think, and it's very deliberately walking into the shot. After watching the modern game, you'd think that this was something that players always did, but walking in straight to the table is something that actually very slowly evolved over time. And in fact, players didn't really start appreciating the full importance of this until the early 90s. And as it turns out, moving towards the table from the wrong angle can cause you to miss a pot even before you've touched the table. You may find you end up missing shots over and over again in exactly the same way, and there was a shot like this that I was having problems with. And that was this blue. Before I played the shot, everything seemed to be lined up right. Down on the shot, I was confident I was going to strike the blue exactly straight and pot it. But when I played the shot, the blue came off 2 cushions and hit the yellow. With further practice of this, I noticed that every single shot I played, more or less, would miss in exactly the same way. Because I understood where I was going to miss the shot, this made it easier to work out why I was missing it. As I seemed to be lining everything up right, this had to be something to do with my technique, but not necessarily something that was going wrong, because I was getting the same result every single time. As I've explained before, where you stand on a shot is massively important, because where you're actually standing affects the position of your body, and that just affects where your cue is. I mean, if I was stood over here, it would be very difficult to pot the blue, but this isn't really about that. Because this was about what happened before I was standing on the shot. So to find out what was going on with that, I first needed to work out exactly where I was standing and mark it. So if this is where my feet go when I play a shot, it seems to be very, very important not only that my feet finish in these 2 positions, but also the direction in which I approach where I'm standing. Because if it's slightly at an angle, it turns out that can affect the entire shot. The weird thing is, the way I was walking into the shot was causing me to miss pots, but even stranger still, it was the fact that I was walking into the shots pretty straight that was actually causing me to miss them. So how can this be? Because what I was doing was standing with my feet directly behind where I'm going to place them when I stand on the shot. So what that meant was when I walked into the table, I was moving my feet straight forward, which seemed good because it brings my cue directly on line for the shot. When the shots got difficult, however, it started to cause the same old problems, requiring a new approach. So instead of standing to the side of the shot and getting my cue in the right position, I've been standing right over the middle of the shot and then walking in to the right position like that. Because if this was all about my feet, then I just want them in a position where I can move them straight forward into where I'm going to stand for the shot. But this isn't about my feet, it's more to do with my head and getting that in the right position. Because the important thing here is to keep my head on the line of the shot, and that means standing behind where I'm going to place one of my feet. And that makes it feel like I'm walking into the shot at a bit of an angle, but really I'm not. So does this actually make a difference? And the answer is yeah, quite a bit. It's all to do with perspective, because from close up it looks like we're striking the cue ball in the centre and we're going to pot the blue. It's only when you come right away from the shot that you see how far out we actually are. It's just easier to see from further away. Because you best line the shot up away from the table, you need to make sure at this stage it's in exactly the right place and not slightly to the side. The difference this makes is it now feels like if I approach the shot like this and just push my cue through, the ball's automatically going to go towards the pocket. Whereas before it felt like I actually had to force it in the right direction a little bit. But that's not the only thing. that can go wrong, because as it turns out, your stance is actually a little bit inconsistent. You remember earlier when I was standing exactly here to play this shot? Well, every single time I walk into the table without looking at my feet, I end up standing somewhere very, very slightly different. But even these minute differences could affect my technique and leave me playing shots at very slightly different angles. And it's actually difficult to say if I was stood in the right place when I marked my feet to start off with. If your game's actually a little bit inconsistent, this is actually worth having a look at and practicing, because the more consistent you can get your stance on the same shot, the easier the game will be to play in the long term. But it's not the only thing that can go wrong with your technique that you probably won't even notice. Most players will bend their bridge arm a small amount, but if this is inconsistent, even this can cause you to miss some fairly straightforward pots. The good news is, tensing up this arm doesn't really make that much of a difference, except it sort of affects everything. Making sure you understand the usual position of your bridge arm is crucial, because I think getting this wrong is the main reason that some players just can't do the same things that they can do in practice in competitions. Unintentionally straightening up your bridge arm can have unwanted effects all over your technique. You may end up finding that you're holding the cue too far forward, or you're toppling over backwards a bit, or you might even find that your head's further from the cue ball than it normally would be, making the shot harder to play. And the result of all of this together, it might be harder to play shots at power or get the control you want when trying to play positional shots. This can be a difficult one to spot, because in the same way as when you get out of bed early in the morning, your body may not want to fully stretch properly when you start playing a game of snooker, and this can cause exactly the same problem. But at least we're having no problem finding Adnan in Sarajevo in Bosnia and Herzegovina. There is something very simple you can overlook when you line shots up, and this can cause you to miss pots by a long, long way. And this usually happens on thinner shots like this, where you get everything right but you don't recognise where the pocket is, and you might be aiming very slightly thick or very slightly thin. And a quick fix is just to simply come round and have a look at the angle on shots like these, just to make sure you know where you want the red to go in this case. Because what can happen quite a lot of the time is a player can think they're missing it because something's going wrong with their technique, and this can lead them to changing things that don't actually need changing at all, rather than just picking up the right angle in the first place. This is only one of a number of things that could go wrong when you're playing a shot into what could be described as a slightly blind pocket. Even though this is very simple, getting this wrong can cause you to lose confidence in the rest of your game. But luckily now we've got the confidence to pin Joshua on the map from Hanover in Germany. Even though you're probably aware you could be missing shots like this because you're striking the cue ball with unwanted side spin, what may not have crossed your mind is that your brain may not have all the information to be able to work out exactly where the centre of the cue ball is. And just as we were explaining earlier, when you're close up to the cue ball, where you think the centre is could be up to a tip length out. In the past, people have considered this to be caused by the position of your eyes, and even which eye is looking at the ball the most. The problem is, what your eyes see still needs to be decoded by your brain, and when it gets there, it's still open to interpretation. The fact is, all of that has to be processed by my brain, and not only can that be wrong, it can also change and even be improved on over time. And that's why I previously tested these. These lightweight snooker balls that were developed by Chris Henry allow you to see how much side you're putting on the ball, because even if you put a trace of side on the ball, it won't go in the pocket. The only way to get the cue ball into the pocket here is to hit it exactly in the centre. So have a look at this video to see if these balls actually do what they say they do, or if you want to find out more about standing in a snooker, have a look at that video. And remember, don't just watch, play, and make the commitment to becoming a better player by subscribing to the channel and visit the website. See you later.